Hello, my name is Stephanie Toman, and this is a series of videos that's going to cover the ICDL Advanced Presentation software. Going to be using PowerPoint to do the demonstrations, and this is the first of the videos called Planning and Preparation, or Preparation and Planning. So most of us will start a PowerPoint presentation and we'll fill in the title slide, and then we'll fill in maybe the next slide with some bullet points, follow some good practice using larger text so that the audience can see, etc. All of these things, which there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is, though, is what we should be doing is thinking about that presentation before we even go into the slides. So this is looking at that area. It's looking at who are your audience. You have to think about the group you're presenting it to, and it could be the level of language that you use, the expertise language you use, terminology. It could be that you've got to be careful with regard to their culture, their age. There's lots of things you need to think about with regard to who. Where, the venue is really important too. Is it a larger venue? How is it laid out? The larger the venue, the bigger the room, the way that might have an impact on how you do your presentation slides and how they can be seen visually, etc. When and how are also important. So things that you need to think about with regard to when you get into that PowerPoint presentation before you start is designing considerations and also accessibility issues. So you've got colour contrast, for example. Red and green do not work for anyone with colour blindness. You might have somebody with visual impairment. You might have somebody that can't hear clearly. So you need to think about how much you can help these different issues that's within your group, possibly. So design considerations can hold a lot of different things to think about. Too many animations, spinning, whizzing, all of these things could distract your audience. So they're supposed to be there to enhance what you're saying. You're the person that has all the information. Your bullets are only giving them an insight into what you're going to talk about. And the animation, like I said, is to enhance that, not to take over everything. So this is what it's going to be for this first video. If you're not taking the qualification, then it should be helpful to those people that are thinking about these things. If you are, then this is going to cover the syllabus with regard to this area. So either way, I hope it helps. Thank you for watching.
Design considerations. We talk about things that you may not be aware of in the audience, but you need to be when you're creating your masterpiece, your PowerPoint presentation. You need to think about the age of the audience. Is it going to be funny? If they're younger, teenagers, how would you keep those engaged? If it was an older generation, how would you encourage those sort of groups to sit and listen to your PowerPoint? So it has to be applicable to the age, and even if the subject area isn't slightly, then you make the PowerPoint presentation sort of more towards that group. Knowledge of your audience is extremely important. Occupation of an audience is important if you're doing a PowerPoint in the working world, but cultural background particularly important. We do not want to put things into our presentation that will offend part of your audience. The size of the audience and the room is also important, because if your room layout is very sort of unsuitable for you standing at the front with a data projector, have they got a data projector even? So you need to think about all these things. Is a microphone needed if it's a very large room? What time do you have available? What pictures could you use instead of text? Because pictures can really get the message across quite quickly. Charts, you don't want lots and lots of data on your PowerPoint. So all these things are things you need to consider as far as your design. Accessibility is another important area. Color contrast. If you don't use this very dark with light text, or vice versa, where you've got very dark text with light backgrounds, then a lot of stuff can't be seen, particularly if you're at the back of the room or you have eyesight problems. So avoid those color contrasts, and also things like red and green together, blue and yellow, particularly because you could have somebody with color blindness in your audience. Font size is particularly important. When you put something onto a slide, text onto a slide, it will normally in PowerPoint give you an idea of what size it would expect you to be using. So you can sometimes reduce that or enlarge it, but be aware that usually they give you an idea. For this example, and this heading is 40. They would normally give you something that would be considered good practice when you're doing a PowerPoint. So don't reduce it too much or enlarge it too much. When it comes to font, people don't always think about it, but when you've got things like sans serif font, in other words, little bits on the side, you can notice that if you use let's just have a look at Times New Roman. So if we go type in T, go down to Times New Roman, Times New Roman has like little bits on it. Whereas if we go to Comic Sans or Calibri, that one will do. Calibri doesn't, it's very clear in its font style. Accessibility issues, particularly things need to be viewed for people that have difficulties with seeing the screen. There is alternative text used on graphics and screen readers that can read that for them. So you can pop those in if it's applicable. So it's normal practice to use colour schemes in slides, also designs. You can design your own, you can make it spectacular. I've seen some amazing things done with just Microsoft Office PowerPoint. You don't need to go into the web and get lots of designs, but they're out there too. So think about all of these different things when it comes to colour. Okay, so background effects. We're going to open the assessment presentation in the next bit of demonstration, and then we'll come back to the slide and have a look and see what we need to do. So back into our work files where we were, and there's an assessment. Okay, so I'm just going to switch back to the other one. You can stay, if you're doing this with me, you can stay on yours, but we're going to switch back and have a look and see what we need to do. So it's asking us to format the background, texture fill, and hide the background graphics. Bring in the ostrich image as a background fill and apply to all slides. So this is what we're actually going to do in order to do this. So we're going to do a texture fill, then we're going to go to the picture area. So we're going through this process, and then we're going to hide it once we've brought the graphic in. Okay, so into the training, and I'm going to right click, make sure I'm not in a placeholder. Notice if I right click in these, I won't get what I'm after. So I need to make sure I'm in a background. You can see the difference there. When you right click away from a placeholder, you will get the format background. You can also get the format background in the design tab. So in the design tab, it's the same feature there. So we're going to do a background. So I'm going to do it on a right click again, format background. I'm going to, it said about going into picture or texture fill. That opens up the option to bring in a picture. So we're going to go and pick up the ostrich picture from our work files on the desktop. Hopefully you've got yours on the desktop as well. Into the folder lecture materials, week 2, section 1, preparation. There's our work files and there's our ostrich. Now, notice the ostrich hasn't come on there. If we apply it to all, it's down here, then it does come in as a background. Whoa, what a background, okay? Obviously, we would have to do something about that in the real world. But what this is demonstrating is, because this is a design that's taken over, you can see this is the design we're using, Metropolitan. If we don't hide this graphic, this is a graphic here on the first page, then you won't see any background. So in order to do that, if you click on the first slide and make sure it's selected and hide the graphic background here, you can see what happens. So sometimes in the exam, you may have graphics on every slide and they don't want it on the first one, so therefore it's hidden. But also it might be that they want you to take it off so that something else will override it. So remember, the hide background graphic is in the format background area. Okay, let's go back to our slide. So back into view, I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoint presentation. And you can see there on the slide, everything's there to remind you when it comes to revision with regard to hiding the graphics, using graphics and hiding the graphics of background. Also, we've got the Metropolitan design. Let's explore the variant group colours. So these are the ones that come over here. So we can pick a design. We've got Metropolitan. So we've done that, created that one with the big bird. So let's go back in Interview and then through the switch window again. So if we take the ostrich off, the background off, we can undo and then, or go back to the beginning, or close and reopen without saving, so that we're back to where we were. So we've got the assessment PowerPoint again, and we not only have designs here, we have what they call variants as well. So you may be asked to explore the variants. If I hover on them, they'll tell you, or show you, I should say, what they are, tell you them as well. We're still on Metropolitan as in a design, but the colours are changing. You can go into the colours themselves here, and you can customize. So if you go into the customize colours at the end here, you can change things to your way of doing things. So you could like have a dark blue there, you could have text background light, all these different accents, and then you can name it as a colour variant that you want to use particularly for a particular PowerPoint. The way that these would work, you can see now in there that that's become that dark blue. The reason for this is that if you've got a PowerPoint with a particular professional colour scheme, I don't know if you notice in the CB we use a lot of purple and like a maroony colour. So you can have these colour schemes brought into your PowerPoint, particularly if they're work related. Okay, so we're going to switch back to our PowerPoint so we know what we're doing and how we're going about it. So we could save that as Big Bird, but we can also just that little bit more, just look at the way that we can use textures, we can use patterns. We've already used a picture, so let's go back over that again. So on a format background, remember if you right click, you've got gradients. So you've got different gradients with regard to this. These can be also changed. So you can click on a gradient stop and you can make that one more white. And you could click on that gradient stop and you could bring in a darker blue. And then you could have a preset. You could take the design off, go back to what you'd call no design taking over, back to, and you can see how that has now affected it. And then you can change these to make a difference as well. You could even bring something into that first one and you could make the colour a lighter blue. And you can see how that has an effect on your PowerPoint. Whoa. But obviously the presets here will also make a difference on how that goes. So you could make that white again, and you could see how that has a different effect. So you've got gradients, you've got pictures as we saw. We brought in a picture, we brought in the ostrich. There's also a building, background building, which you could apply to all, and then you would probably never see anything with that picture. But with that picture as well, you can change the transparency. So you can make it more and more transparent, which would make sense using this feature here. Texture came on when we didn't use a picture, so let's undo till we get rid of the picture. And you can see the texture came up there automatically. There are the textures. You can apply a texture, you can keep it on the one you've selected, or you can apply to all. And then you've got patterns. So people don't always realise the patterns are here. Whoa! And you can see how they could work quite well or be quite difficult, depending on what you're doing. Okay, so we've done a big overview of design considerations and those background effects. And we've looked at how we bring in background pictures, background texture, Variants can change when you use a design, a set design. You can change the colours used within it, the colour schemes, and you can actually do some of your own, so I'm customizing them. So remember all those different things in the exam, and particularly one of the things to remember is that hiding the graphic on a particular slide. So that's also in the format background. And when you right click for a format background, make sure you're right clicking in the right area. Remember the principles at the beginning with regard to considerations when doing a presentation and what the audience is, etc., because there will be some multiple choice questions on that.